My adult child says they're fine, but they're not moving forward. That is a situation that I hear from parents all the time, right? Your adult child is saying they're fine, but they're not moving forward. Now, let me tell you right at the beginning of this talk, being fine and moving forward are not the same thing. Let me tell you about this young man that was a part of a family that I worked with. Right out of high school, things looked pretty promising, right? He had a full time job, he had a girlfriend, he had friends, he was paying for his own gas, his own spending money, and he was starting to contribute to some of the expenses at home. His parents had even heard him talking about, like, with his friends about moving in with them someday, right? So everything seemed like a normal beginning to an adult life. But then things started to change. First, he and his girlfriend broke up. And then his friends seemed to drift apart. And the excitement of working that full time basic job started to wear off, right? The plans that he had never really happened. So several years went by like this, and he's still at home. He's only working a part time job. Now, he's still paying for his expenses. He contributes what his parents ask him to contribute. He isn't disrespectful and he helps out when he's asked. Right? But most of his time he spends in his room, gaming all night, then sleeping during the day. He'll work his 3 shifts per week and then right back to gaming again. His social life was basically just online. And his parents would tell me when they tried to talk to him about his future, he would just say, I'm fine. I like things the way they are. I don't really want anything different. Now, what really scared the parents isn't what he was doing today. It was that from 5 years from now and down the road, he's going to be doing the exact same thing. Now, the first thing I want to say with this is I don't believe he is actually fine. I don't mean that in a judgmental way either, right? I think being fine is easier than being scared. I think that's what's going on with a lot of young adults, right? They started out wanting more. They wanted friends, they wanted relationship, they had purpose, independence, they wanted a place of their own, but then life got harder than they expected. Maybe it was a breakup, maybe friends moved on, maybe things just became too repetitive, or maybe they just didn't know what direction they were going to go, right? They were afraid of failing, they were afraid of choosing wrong. Some of them are just afraid that they're not going to be successful at all and what that's going to look like and what people are going to say. So over time, I see these young adults, they stop moving towards something and they start avoiding discomfort. Like gaming, right? Gaming isn't always about having fun. Sometimes it's about not feeling worse. Sometimes I'm fine really means I don't want to think about it. I don't know what to do. I don't want to fail. I don't want another disappointment. And if they don't feel connected enough to talk about those things, then they just keep them to themselves, right? They don't even pay attention to themselves, what's going on inside of them. And I think that's where a lot of parents get stuck, right? Because they start asking the wrong questions. They ask, how do I get my child motivated? How do I get them to stop gaming? How do I get them to go to college or get them into a trade? How do I get them to care? But I think the bigger question is, are they moving forward? Because that's what we're really talking about. We're not talking about, are they going to become a doctor? Or are they not living the life that you would choose for them? Are they moving forward? And this is where boundaries become very important. Not controlling boundaries, not micromanaging boundaries. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about telling a 25-year-old what time to go to bed or counting how many gaming hours they have. And I'm certainly not talking about forcing college. I'm talking about something much simpler. Living in your home should be a part of the plan, not the destination. That's the boundary, right? Living here is part of your journey towards independent adulthood. It's not where the journey stops. So, for some parents, and this is big, because for some parents, the child is already doing many things right. They're respectful, they're contributing, they're helping, they're not creating chaos. So the issue isn't their bad behavior. The issue is they've stopped building a life. And that's where it's okay. That's where it's okay to have conversations like, what are your plans? What are you working towards? What are you exploring? What does moving out eventually look like? Right? You talk about what are the next steps. Notice I'm not telling them what those steps have to be. We're not choosing their career. We're not choosing their future. We're not choosing their path. We're not asking them to do what we want them to do. We're asking them to have their own plan, right? To have their own future, their own ideas. Because your job as a parent is not to tell your adult child what life to build. Your job is to make sure they're building one. And that's important. That's a very important distinction. So the final thing I want to say is this. Many parents think boundaries and connection are opposites. Like you put your foot down, period, into the discussion. That is not it, right? That's not what we're talking about. It's like this. Here is what living in this house and moving forward looks like. Now, let's keep talking about how you're going to move your life forward. In fact, right? In fact, clear boundaries often create better conversations because you're not arguing about whether they need to move forward. That part's already established. Now you're talking about how they're doing. What's hard? What's scary? What's keeping them stuck? What do they want? What are they afraid of? And that's where your relationship becomes incredibly important because you don't create motivation for your adult child. I want to say that again. I need parents to hear that. You do not create motivation for your adult child. You create a relationship where they feel safe enough to talk honestly about what's going on. And many times, that's where the real movement begins. That's all they need, right? Is to be connected and heard and have that safe place. No, you don't get to that safe place with control or with lectures and ultimatums, but with clear expectations, clear boundaries, and ongoing conversations about how they're doing. That's how you get there, right? You've got to keep that conversation going while the boundaries are very clear about where they are going. So everything I've talked about today, I know it sounds much easier when we're talking about somebody else's family. It's much harder when it's your son. It's much harder when it's your daughter. It's much harder when you've been worried for years, when you've had the same conversations over and over. When you're watching someone you love struggle and you don't know what to do next, that's hard. So if you are in that place today, I want you to know you are not alone. There are a lot of parents in this very group that are facing similar situations. So I can't promise you exactly how your child's story is going to unfold, but I can tell you this. Don't give up. Keep showing up. Keep having the conversations. Keep working towards clear boundaries and healthy connection. Remember, your job is not to tell your adult child what life to build. Your job is to make sure they're building one. And sometimes the progress is slower than we'd like, but that doesn't mean that progress isn't possible. So if you want more support, right? If you need more help with this, make sure you're on the email list. I'm going to put the link in the comments and stay connected to this group, right? If this discussion resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it, right? We can talk about it more. We can go deeper, but get on that email list. And remember, we have workshops and other resources that are available for you.